paused, and I am going to welcome you. My name is Laurie Ryan. I'm the president of the Exton Region Chamber of Commerce, and this is our second in the 2021 series of our In the Know for NPOs. It's an interactive presentation of expert panelists discussing issues that impact nonprofits. This is, I think, our fourth year, and we do meet quarterly. And just the amount of education I've received over the past 4 years has really built me up as someone who leads a chamber as well as a not-for-profit. So I'm hoping that you as executive directors or staff or board members will get a lot out of this. I don't do this alone. We have a great nonprofit council at the Exton Region Chamber of Commerce. We have over 40 nonprofits in our chamber, and we have members of the for-profit and nonprofit community that come together and try to support the nonprofits. Today, I'd just like to spotlight one feature, one benefit of nonprofit membership besides the In the Know for NPOs, and that's our executive director roundtable. And I wanted to ask Chris Zaccarelli if she spearheaded it, started it up, keeps it going for 2 years. Chris, would you like to just speak a little bit about what you guys do with the roundtable?
Sure. We meet monthly. We've been meeting via Zoom for quite some time now. Hopefully we'll start to meet in person again in the summer. It's just a monthly meeting of executive directors only. So it's not the open to the entire leadership of your organization. It's just open to our executive directors because we recognize that it can be a lonely job. And so we really just want to have a safe, confidential place to, sometimes we talk about what's happening in our personal lives. Other times it's a problem that we want to bring. And other times it's just to vent to each other because we don't have anybody else to vent to. So that we usually get an attendance of anywhere between 6 and 8. We haven't broken out into 2 groups yet, but I anticipate we may be doing that because our membership has seemed to actually grown during Zoom. Our next meeting is actually next Thursday or Wednesday. I can't remember now. We meet at 3:00 in the afternoon, and it's usually for about an hour. But if conversation takes us longer than an hour, we will take it. So if you are, and you have to be a member of the chamber in order to attend. It is a benefit of chamber membership only, and it's only open to Exton Region Chamber of Commerce nonprofits. So if you're interested in learning more or having me add you to our email list so that you get the calendar invites for the meetings, please just shoot me an email. I'll toss my email up in the chat. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thanks, Chris. I totally appreciate that. I'd now like to introduce our sponsor for today. Our sponsor is Pam Leland of the Leland Leadership Group. And Pam, I would like to ask if you could please speak a little bit about what you do and what motivated you to be the sponsor for the In the Know for NPOs for 2021.
Hi, everybody. So I know many of you, and I look forward to meeting others of you, but it's nice to be here and to be the sponsor, one of the sponsors for this series for the year. For those of you who know me, I'm a management consultant, and I work exclusively with nonprofit and philanthropic organizations with an occasional government entity thrown in at times, public sector. And what I really want to share today is I read a quote recently, and I put it on right in front of me at my desk, and I've been thinking about it a lot, about the work I do and why we do this as a chamber and why I'm proud to be a part of it. And the sentence I read recently, several months now, was, "Progress happens at the speed of trust." And I'm going to repeat that. Progress happens at the speed of trust. I just think that is so powerful and so critical, and certainly informs the work I do and the opportunity to create relationships that are built on trust, not only between me as a consultant and the organizations I'm working with, but also within the organizations. So for example, if I'm working on a planning process or an executive search process, how do we create a process that will build confidence and legitimacy within your various stakeholder groups, so that when we get to the end of the process, the project we're doing together, there is increased trust and a stronger relationship between you and your staff, within your board, with you and your donors, whatever the initiative. I think trust is fragile and needs to be shepherded and tended to regularly. And I think what we do at the Exton Chamber with this nonprofit roundtable we have and with this series is one way of demonstrating to the community at large, but also to our membership, that we are as invested in philanthropic, charitable, member-based nonprofits as we are in for-profit businesses. So I'm happy to be a part of this group, and very much look forward to talking about the zombie apocalypse. Thanks, Lori.
Thanks, Pam. And you said it so beautifully and eloquently, and I really appreciate that. Progress happens at the speed of trust, and I really appreciate you for everything. I think now, right on time, we will move into our program. And I would like to officially welcome Janet Zeiss from the Chester County Food Bank, who will be our moderator today. Janet comes with a lot of history in terms of emergency management, as well as support for the especially Chester County community. Without further ado, I'd like to turn this over to Janet.
Thank you so much, Laurie. I'm really excited about this topic. It's near and dear in my heart, and really has been for a long time. My last position, I was there for exactly 3 weeks, and Hurricane Irene came to visit. And then it was time to figure out, okay, what are we going to do? And it sure would have been nice to have had a plan for that. I grew up in Chester County. I certainly wasn't expecting a hurricane to show up. I was expecting to have a cushy government job, but that's not exactly how it played out. In terms of business continuity planning here in this county, I am not afraid to steal from the best. And at that point, the best I found was actually the Office Depot Foundation. So Office Depot Foundation, located in Florida, and it was actually started after Hurricane Andrew. And their thought was, if we were going to fund nonprofits, we want to make sure they're going to be there to help the next time the hurricane comes to visit. So they actually set up a business continuity program. They'd invite nonprofits to come to a business continuity summer camp, and they worked with them. So they helped them build it, knowing that that was going to be where the community was going to turn in a disaster. So we didn't quite have the bandwidth to offer the summer camp, but we did have the ability to use that idea and to use that vision. So we partnered with the United Way of Chester County and Chester County First, which is a business continuity group in the more on the private sector. And we started working with nonprofits, and we helped them put it together. Were we planning for zombies? Not necessarily, though we may as well have been. Were we planning for a pandemic? Pretty much no. But at the end of the day, I'm really hoping that some of those conversations, relationships, and part they put in place were useful moving forward. So it's an important topic. Everybody now has a public health lens. Everybody now has an emergency management lens. But let's see how they got there as we meet our panelists and hear some of their adventures, misadventures, and what they're going to do next. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our first panelist and welcome Heather to introduce herself and her journey.
Good morning. Thank you, Janet. And Janet, I met Janet as we were getting into emergency planning at Historic Sugartown. I'm executive director at Historic Sugartown. I've been there since late 2012. And as we were first, I should mention that we have a historic village with 9.2 acres and 9 or 11 buildings or structures, depending on how you count them. So we have a bit of physical space that we have to take care of and stored throughout the years, and collections as well. And we, about 6 years ago, we started talking to an organization called the Conservation Center for Art and Historic Artifacts, also known as CAHA, because we love our acronyms. And they awarded us a preservation assessment to look at how we did emergency preparedness at Historic Sugartown. The reason I should mention, behind me in my picture here, you see a tree down and had crushed 2 picnic tables. That happened last August in the midst of the pandemic, but that's the sort of disaster we're more accustomed to at Historic Sugartown, not the pandemic. But in any case, so I wanted to show what reality normally is for us. But CCAHA helped us put together some thoughts about how we look at our site. And eventually they helped us get a National Endowment for the Humanities grant to do an emergency plan for the site. Now, that plan focused a lot about buildings and structures and collections, a little bit about human resources, and mostly how to push out our people when we have a disaster on the site, like this tree down behind me. But none of it prepared us for there's not one mention. I went back and looked. It's over a 100-page document. There's not one mention about pandemics. But it did help us going through that process and having our staff and board think about planning in this way did set us up for being able to successfully, kind of figure out what we had to do when everything shut down on March 13th last year. It gave us a framework to start from. Historic Sugartown not only has a public face with museum tours and programs and events that obviously had to get canceled and moved and shifted to virtual programs, but we also have residential and office tenants on our property. And so we had to get safety procedures and cleaning procedures up really quickly because a couple of our businesses were essential, and obviously our 2 residential tenants, they were staying home. So so we had to figure out how we were going to handle that on the property really quickly. And also in terms of our disaster planning beforehand, it made us grapple with issues like we have, again, a 9-acre campus. Our facilities manager was out on the grounds most of the time. If a phone call had to come in, it had to get to him. So we had transferred over to using a VoIP system that could port to our cell phones. So when everything shut down last year and we were suddenly moving to remote, we didn't even have to think. Everything shifted seamlessly over. Our phones were, phone system was not an issue at all. We already used a lot with Google Drive. So a lot of our shift to being remote was, we barely had to bat an eyelash. And a lot of that came out of the planning that we had done previously. In terms of wider efforts, and Janet, please stop me if you want me to not go into this much further. We also, as part of that effort with CCAHA, started, they had a woman named Samantha Forsco, who is leading an effort to establish regional alliances for response. And she had set one up in Philadelphia. She wanted to set one up in the suburbs of Philadelphia. And there's a few others throughout the state. And we put together she had Historic Sugartown help spearhead an effort to create a steering committee in this regional effort. We did do that. We were working with Chester County History Center and a few other organizations around the area. And I'm going to put in the chat, we do have a website if you want to find out more about it. It was basically to serve history museums, libraries, archives, and other types of arts organizations in the event of a disaster. On a very basic level, we started out having some workshops that were facilitated by CCAHA. They also provided us a disaster catch that we now have stored at Chester County Emergency Management, or Emergency Services. And we have agreement that you could sign and have access to that disaster catch if, God forbid, there is a disaster on your site. Like, and when I say disaster, I'm thinking flooded basements, a fire, the more of the physical disasters, less so pandemics, although the county did prevail upon us last year. Janet called me and we were able to donate all the gloves and masks that we had in that catch at the time.
Never thought we were pulling that together for a pandemic. That's for sure. But I think
Who knew? Who
really
knew? And we actually had stuff.
I think Heather highlighted some great things. It's highlighting the importance of sometimes it's stuff, sometimes it's technology, sometimes it's people.
Yeah.
It's going to come down to relationships with those in your professional organizations,
Exactly.
within your area of interest, but also within the neighborhood. So with that, I think we'll throw it over to Jeff to introduce himself.
Thanks, Janet. Good morning, everybody. Great to be with you this morning. I'm Jeff Spencer. I'm the Scout Executive and CEO of the Chester County Council, Boy Scouts of America. We serve Chester County and the northern part of Cecil County, Maryland. At the time the pandemic hit, we were serving approximately 4,500 youth in about 150 scouting programs, Cub Scout packs, Scouts BSA troops, and through our older programs, venturing and exploring. Our motto is be prepared. And but I don't think any of us were prepared for this. It was hard to see this coming, and so we had to take swift action to try and survive the apocalypse. So it was just a little bit about me. I started as in this role at the beginning of 2019. I have been working professionally for the Boy Scouts my whole career, right out of college, primarily in the Northeast region. This is my 6th Scout Council. So we got through the first year. I got through the first year of my role, and it went well. And then the first quarter was rolling along, and we were building on things. And then this happened. So it completely flipped everything upside down, and we went from making some really good progress on a lot of fronts to having to try and survive both financially and to try and keep our programs going. Scouting is all about groups getting together and organizing kids outside and doing things in groups of people. Our volunteers and our scouts that we serve, that's our program model. So how do you do that when you can't do that? So the board was really challenged to think through that with me, and we came up with, we acted swiftly and made some really hard decisions. We had to cut expenses. We had to look at alternative funding sources, and we had to come up with a plan to try and keep our units together with us through it. And we're still doing that. And, we're not out of this, as everybody knows. So I was very thankful I had a really engaged board to think through this with, and we put together a revised budget. Was basically managing cash and trying to really get through this, just to not go under financially, and as I said, to keep our units with us, because we've to be honest experienced a lot of challenges as far as families choosing to sit this one out for a while. A lot of times scouting and other activities for young people now aren't the priority. It's figuring out school and home and doing everything else. So, but we're thankful for those families that have stayed with us, and we're expecting to rebuild once we get through this. But it's challenging. I mean, this is throwing curveballs every day, as all of you know, and you just gotta do what you can to get through it. We got very creative on some things. We did a virtual fundraiser that was very successful. That we had to kind of take one fundraiser that we were doing and invent it in another way, and fortunately that helped us. And then a meeting space. I mean, the biggest challenge we had is where our units meet, because a lot of the charter partners, typically churches and and other community organizations where scouting happens closed down. So our units were really put outside and we had to utilize park pavilions and all sorts of different places for units to try and gather and get together where they could safely. And, and then when the days got shorter and the weather turned colder, that became a challenge too. So that's a lot of what we've been facing with and figuring that out. Like I said, we have a very engaged board that's working through this. We have scouting has awesome volunteers. I mean, they've really risen to the occasion and kept this thing going. And and our staff, unfortunately, we had to take our staff down from about a staff of 20. We started with 5 and we've been kind of building back up capacity, but they had to really buckle down and figure this out. And we're doing things that they may not have been doing before, just trying to get through this, and week by week, we just talked and figured it out. And like I said, we got through it the best we can, and we're still getting through it. But, as many of you know, we're building, by the way, this happened when we were building our new home, our program activity and resource campus right in Exton, right on Business Route 30 there. You've probably seen the building. It's looking great. We're hoping to be in there hopefully late next month or early June. It's coming together real well. But, how do you do that in the middle of this? Well, we had to figure that out too. And we've done it, but it wasn't easy for sure. So that's a little bit about me and the challenges we faced. And, I'll turn it back over to Janet and happy to, say more about any of that later in the panel here.
Thank you, Jeff. And that, once again, it's a great reminder that, sometimes it's about losing your space, but what does that really mean? And what does it mean when there are no other spaces available? And I think we're going to turn it over to Denise, who actually almost had the opposite problem. She had space, but now it's what is she doing with it? How does her organization and the community work together to address their needs and the needs of the community?
Okay, thank you, Janet, and thanks for being invited and to join this panel and such. And I see there's plenty of people who could be speaking on this today. As everybody has said, we always felt we had great crisis management in place, but nobody could have expected this. But having a foundation of safety and risk and preparation certainly did help us to respond, I believe. And I was very proud of the response and how quickly we were able to pivot and the flexibility. The word of the year was pivot, I believe, and adaptability. The flexibility of our staff team was amazing. How quickly we were able to come together and start to make the transition. Obviously, we had thought about moving to teams and had everything ready to go, but it was something we thought was going to take longer. It was amazing that within 24 hours, all of a sudden, things you think are going to take months, you find out just how quickly you can put things in place. But getting people trained, getting laptops out to people, and connectivity, and making sure everybody could participate was quite a feat, but our team really worked quickly to do that. I kind of wrote it down, just some little things that I would say lessons learned. And I got to tell you, I'm sure you all feel that way when you start thinking back to over a year ago. My heart starts racing again, and it's like I've wanted to block that out because I feel like we're over the hump now, but we're certainly not out of the woods, as Jeff said. But, we were very quick. I feel we were very quick to pull levers and to prepare for the worst but plan to be ready and, hope for the best. But, we really didn't hesitate to start pulling levers, considering what we could be facing and to be completely closed down. Unlike other nonprofits, we also, besides having a robust, fundraising and, community contributions, we have membership and programs. Membership is our largest revenue that really helps drive what we can do in the community oftentimes as well. And it's an important piece of our sustainability. And just to give you an idea of how we were affected in 2020, at the end of the year, we were down 20 million in revenues over 2019. We had 1,800 staff. And now that we're reopening stuff, right now we're at about 800 staff. When everything first hit, we had 260 of those were full-time. Majority of our staff are part-time. You know, we're down now, we have about 150 full-time folks. So big difference, people in dual positions and continuing to look differently. And I talk about trying to make lemonade out of lemons, and it's been very difficult at times, but we've tried to find the bright spots in there and some things, you know, going forward that will probably make our organization stronger, different types of structures. And so I think that, you know, I would just say to really look at that. But you know, my little points were, you know, don't panic, don't hesitate to act. I do believe it's really important. One of the things that leaders have to do, and everybody's a leader, but is being able to make the difficult decisions. And I will say that in a 35-year career, I've never made more difficult decisions than I had to because of the people that were involved, people who gave their life to the why and were passionate about it, and having to do layoffs and furloughs. I never want to go through that again. It was heartbreaking. But, you know, we did it. You know, I would like to also say, you think, you know, you do the right things and it's fairly, and do everything you can to recognize what people have given. Communicating regularly and with transparency. I think that was really important to us, to be completely transparent to the community, and how we were being affected and how we were responding. I, you know, always have a list of stakeholders. Part of our crisis communication is a list of stakeholders to communicate with, and just remember to be sharing with those stakeholders right away. And make sure that, you know, including local volunteers in our, we also changed the way we do our boards, our association board, and then we have branch boards. We included our branch board members in our association board meetings just as observers, so that we were making sure everybody was hearing the same information and it was consistent, and they could always, you know, ask questions as well. But, you know, just communicating regularly was really important. We held a number of town halls with our staff, so our staff could hear, because it was a very, you know, trying time for everybody. And we wanted to make sure our staff are all hearing the same message and could ask questions and knew where we were, where we were going, and what they could expect. So, you know, gathering our team and leading with empathy and confidence, you know, listening to their needs and ideas, I think was very important, that they were a part of it and pulling together. As I said, I was amazed at what the team could accomplish in quick learning curve. And quickly, everybody moved to, okay, we've got to do this, this, and this, but how do we help the community? How do we make sure that our doors are open, use our resources of, you know, we have facilities pretty strategically located throughout the county. How could we be of help? So we reached out to food banks. We worked with Leah as well in our Kennett. Every one of our branches became food distribution and collection. We mobilized our members for good. So our members were bringing in food and they were volunteering to help. Blood drives. You may have heard now, we had reached out to the county when things were changing and asked if they needed us to be vaccination sites. So 2 of our branches are vaccination sites, to the point that, you know, we could be doing program in our gyms now, but we really believe that we, you know, could best serve the community by making sure that our gyms were vaccination sites. They only needed 2, but we offered every one of them. You know, blood drives, continuing to do blood drives regularly at all of our branches as much as needed. And, you know, just, you know, trying to make sure our doors were open and offering to help in any way we can, and continue in this format. I want to make sure nonprofits know to please reach out if there's some way we can help you do your service to the community, to please reach out and ask. We'll do what we can. We've done diaper drives. Our members, we had 70,000 members when this all started. We're still down. We're probably only 40% of our members have come back. We've got a number that continue to remain on hold, but it continues to be a very trying time. But I do believe that you do the right thing, things will work out. And, you know, we are certainly here to help. We involved our volunteers a lot. We created a strategic recovery committee that meets very regularly, a very diverse group of folks, and looking at, you know, strategies, obviously the near term, but the longer term. And we've always done contingency planning, and we started that immediately. Right now, I'd say we know things are never going to be the same. We don't expect that. And then know that we have to adapt and continue to look at what the emerging community needs are, how we can respond to that, and then how we adapt our current, if you say, business model to make sure that we will not only be able to remain relevant but sustainable. And we know, as I said, that things have changed. So our board has been supportive of that, and we're looking at some really exciting things and some changes and pivots, and getting ready to survey our members about some new types of programming. And immediately we did emergency childcare, and we did camp last year. We were able to do it very safely, following all the governor's orders, and we err on the side of safety. We certainly had people saying, you should open up, but we weren't gonna do that. We keep the mask on and put all the safety precautions that we can in place to make sure that that's first and foremost.
I think that's a great point. It's really, how are you balancing the wants of the community, the needs of the community, the ever-changing conditions, and the fact that, as I said, as this has evolved, it wasn't the tornado came through and suddenly, okay, now we're going to rebuild. It's we're planning, we're preparing, we're responding, we're recovering, all at the same time, and really trying to keep the focus on how's your organization staying alive, but also how are you making sure that you're really serving those community needs. So with that, I'm actually going to take it to Leah, who is doing that. And once again, just because you're facing one challenge doesn't mean there aren't going to be others as well that pop up.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you, everyone, so much. For those of you brave enough to be on camera this morning, I appreciate that. It Zoom's a little like talking to a seance sometimes, Can you hear me? Are you there? Happy Friday. In preparation for today's panel and the conversations that led up to this, talking to everybody at the Exton Chamber and Janet, and listening to my colleagues this morning, I just took, I think, the first breath that I've had in more than a year. I had a picture come up in my Facebook memories of Denise Day standing in her Y with my pre-packed boxes of food this time last year. To back it up a little bit, I started the position at CACS as executive director at the very end of July of 2019. CACS, if you're not aware, Kennett Area Community Service, home of the Kennett Food Cupboard, it's not a membership-based nonprofit. We provide food and emergency assistance and crisis services to people in need. All our operations are funded entirely by donations and some grants. One of our good partners, I see Carrie Freeman's on this call through United Way of Southern Chester County, and some through Chester County for their homelessness diversion and prevention programs. We don't charge anyone for our services either. We don't turn anyone away that appears for food, whether they're in the 3 school districts we serve or they're in Delaware or Maryland and they're scared and looking for food. Basically, we serve the poorest of the poor in Southern Chester County. So as I told you, I started my position as executive director at the end of July of 2019. By October 1st, which was the beginning of our fiscal year, we had new leadership positions. We had a new board president. I was new, a new food cupboard manager. I had created a mission advancement coordinator. Somebody helped me with communications and fundraising, and we're just getting some ideas together around all that. She started 2 weeks before the fire in the food cupboard, which was October 13th. A lot of businesses paid money for team building exercises. The fire was handed to us as our first. We leaned in, we figured out a plan, we called key stakeholders. We said, hey, this is what's happening, what can we do? And the community responded with such generosity that it was a bit overwhelming. We disposed of 2,500 pounds of donated food that we couldn't use because of the fire and the smoke. The community showed up with over 60,000 pounds of food. We had a new problem. We had no space. We were moving food all over Cedar Street, trying to find temporary storage. I contacted the Chester County Food Bank. I said, can you please help us? They took pallet after pallet of food and helped us sort and store it until we could call it back into the food cupboard to be used. I think that's about the time right after that fire. I met Janet for the first time. I didn't even know there was an emergency response something in the county because we've been through the fire, and she calls me and I'm like, nobody's mentioned your name. And she said, that's part of the problem. We started working together then, and as she moved to the Chester County Food Bank during this crazy year, of course, our communications increased. Then in March, that first week, and then the second week of March, my volunteers came back from their standing food pickups. The trucks we send out were empty. No stores had a single thing to give us to give to people. We stood in the food cupboard and we didn't know really what to do or what to think of it. And then boom, March 13th, Friday the 13th, the national announcement, it's COVID-19, everybody must shut down, it's killing people, all the fear, the uncertainty, wave after wave of this. We stood in the food cupboard that Friday. I called the staff together and the volunteers that were there. And really, quite frankly, I had no plan. I said, I need two things. I need you to trust me, and I need us to communicate. I need us to lean in and work together to figure this out. I suspended all 75 volunteers that afternoon out of safety. I don't know, within hours, the governor of Pennsylvania required organizations that were going to stay open to apply to become an essential organization. I applied for CACs. I went online that Saturday morning and let the community know that CACs was going to give until we had nothing left to give. And that's really was my only plan. I went to the food cupboard Saturday and I created our first pre-packed boxes. I made 80 boxes of what we had left in the food cupboard that Friday afternoon. I put an order in at the local Giant to try to buy produce, meat, eggs, bread, and milk. And then weekly, we decided we would start delivering food outside of the cupboard and put it on tables and call families up. So families would come up to the outside window. They say it's a family of 5 or a family of 7, whatever it was. We would put the food together according to family size, take it outside and try to mitigate all the human interaction and contact that we could. Then we got deemed an essential organization by the governor. But part of that decree was, at that time, you can't serve anybody who's not wearing a mask. Most of the people coming to the food cupboard at the end of March and all through April and May did not have masks. It was not exactly a thing then, and it was not widely available. So I went online and I told the truth. I said, I need help. CACs needs help. We need masks. I handed out masks. I put tape down outside in our driveway to try to keep people socially distanced. I stood outside flapping my arms like this, trying to get people to understand how far apart to be from one another. Every Friday, we delivered food to almost 200 households. We needed food. So in April, I spoke with Tom Gallagher, who was working at the Kennett Y then, and Denise, and I said, do you have room over there? Can we collect food there? Because we don't have enough room in our tiny food cupboard to sort it. And they said, absolutely. I got a couple of other calls from other nonprofit leaders there at the end of March and beginning of April. We all started to lean in to one another. Christian Proto from the garage called and said, listen, I know you've suspended your volunteers. I will come and help hand out food. And I've got a couple of employees who are not afraid to come help you. I had other businesses reach out to me and they sent a couple people. My board president, who was new in her position and new as a board president, stood in the food cupboard with me week after week, moving food around and moving it outside and feeding families. It was unbelievable, the need, the overwhelming amount of people that started showing up. We had then in April a huge increase in requests for emergency assistance because that's when the economic fallout of all these shutdowns and quarantines started to affect the community. People started coming to us saying, we need help with rent. We've been unemployed. I can't go back to work without a COVID negative test. So we started making some internal changes to our own policies. And I kept telling the truth to everybody. And I made sure that our board was completely engaged from the start. Trust and communication don't just appear. You have to take action for that to happen. So I stayed in contact and it was exhausting. You doing all of this and then making sure that your key stakeholders, your staff, your board, trusted advisors, key funders know exactly what's happening week to week. At the end of each week, I would routinely send out how many visits to the food cupboard that week, and how much money we had paid out in emergency assistance payments to help people stay in their homes. I also made it a point to stay authentic and not buy into the fear myself, which was difficult. I wanted to make sure that I didn't over reassure the community, the funders, the public, our internal selves. We just really took it one day at a time, one thing at a time. It was quite a bit.
That's a really important point. I think there's a couple of things here. One, it's that asset-based community development. Don't tell us what you don't have. Everybody had problems at that point. It was tell us what you do have and how you could be a part of this. And that's very much, I think, communicating in both directions. It's really making sure that the clients that you're serving and the communities that you're serving know that, but it's also making sure that your board and your employees and everyone else in your circles. So let's look a little bit about that communication piece. Jeff, how did you find you were able to actually communicate this? You know, it's a difficult time. Families are distracted by other things. You want to stay relevant, but you're the touchstone for a lot of those families as well.
Yeah, Janet, we found that's what people were craving the most is communication. Like, what do we do? How do we get through this? So basically what we did is we utilized, a lot of you probably use Constant Contact. I mean, we just did a weekly newsletter and got as many emails we could on that distribution list. And we're very careful and calculated on what kind of information we put out. We really wanted to sense what did people need? What did they want to hear? Well, they wanted to know, how do I conduct a scout meeting safely? You know, we didn't expect them to figure that out. We figured it out and provided them guidance on how to do it safely. And, we followed like everybody, we followed the guidelines of the Pennsylvania Department of Health and the CDC and the county health department. And then we put together, and our national office provided guidance as well. And we put that together and pushed that out and told them how to do a scout meeting safely. As you know, there were indoor numbers as far as how many can gather. There were outdoor numbers as far as how many could gather in a single space. So we had to, delineate that and put that out. And that's constantly changing. So we wanted to keep in front of that. One thing we did is we let our scout units know what other units were doing. And I think that was very encouraging. What are other Cub Scout packs and Scouts BSA troops doing, and what success are they having, and how are they navigating this? Another thing we did is we have a monthly roundtable meeting where unit leaders come together. It used to be in person, but now as we're all utilizing this technology, we organized virtual roundtable meetings, and we did that often. And that was another way. And we got, interestingly enough, we got a lot more attendance than we typically did with the in-person meetings, because people were wanting just to get together and talk to other people and figure this out together. So that's been a success as well. And then I'd say finally, we organized activities for units. We jumped in and helped provide program. We did a virtual camporee where we had kids participate virtually in a camporee that ordinarily would be in person. So they, camped out in their backyard and took pictures of it and went into Zoom meetings like this and did scout skills and that worked real well early on. I think people really liked that. We even had, believe it or not, scouts and families from other parts of both Pennsylvania and even the country jumping in on those things, because people were just looking online. Hey, where can I participate? What's going on out there? How do I do this? So that was really successful. But I think people now are through this. They we can't just keep doing things virtually. People are anxious to get outside and do things in the outdoors, which is what our program model was. So those are some of the strategies we put together and put out there, and I think it And we're still doing that. We still, constant communication is key to just keeping everybody on the same page, and we're sensitive to that and try and do that as often as we can.
Okay, thank you for that, Jeff. Heather, how are you communicating with your folks? Obviously, you're in a very different position than Jeff was, as far as, you know, being engaging families and that type of thing. You're more engaging visitors, and you're looking for event-based opportunities and things like that. So how are you communicating with both that as well as your board?
Yeah, in terms of when everything was shut down, we bumped up our social media presence quite a bit, just spotlighting things that were kind of fun facts about the preservation of the village, you know, different things about the collections, that sort of thing, just to put it out there. And we had a lot of traffic because a lot of people were doing social media when everyone was stuck at home. We are, in terms of our board and communication, I was communicating with our board weekly with just an email update. We were working on reopening plans. Normally we would meet every other month. Well, because of the, you know, we wanted to have more rapid updates, we would meet once a month via Zoom. We had the best attendance we've ever had, although our attendance on our board is really good. There's a lot of communication right along. I felt extremely supported, thankfully, by our board. They were just concerned about what we had been doing. We also did our regular newsletters and so forth throughout the year. One of the things that we discovered, one of the things that was fortuitous, our book bindery, we have a book bindery on the site that and offer workshops and book restoration and other things in there. And our bookbinder is fantastic. Ramon Townsend, he decided to experiment with doing a virtual bookbinding workshop, which I was amazed that you could do that virtually, but he figured out how. And we tried that, and we ended up having a whole new program that's probably going to be a permanent thing for Historic Sugartown. He now has, I think, 3 different workshops he offers virtually, and we're attracting people from all over the country now, let alone locally. And so as we're communicating with folks, again, we're using our social media, we're using our e-news. We did a lot more with direct mail to our donors and such. And more recently, I was just wondering if I had one on my desk. I don't see one. We sent out a thank you back about a month ago to everyone who had either participated in a workshop, had made a donation to Historic Sugartown last year, helped us out with this or that. We sent a thank you card out to everyone, just to thank them for sticking with us and supporting us and making sure that Historic Sugartown was still standing after all of this, and that we're going to be coming back. But we, you know, and having our events and things again. And we will have a bright future. So communicating that way, and we got a wonderful response to that, by the way. Just staying in touch was the key, I think.
Okay, thank you, Heather. And I know, Denise, obviously you're putting out a lot of different messages. You're putting out the challenges of keeping your organization open,
Yeah.
but you're also trying to, you know, really harness that enthusiasm and that willingness to help. So how do you kind of balance those two pieces through your communications?
Well, that is an interesting, yeah, because we're trying to serve our members. Many of our members continue to pay their dues for months and months, and thankfully to keep us afloat. And so we're certainly trying to serve them. And we've done tons of virtual programming and have gotten extremely creative in different ways, and very creative of how we did a virtual event and fundraising and all those types of things. But, I do think, as we go forward, what we really all need to be focused on together is more collaboration and partnerships and coordination of how we can lift each other up to be here for our community and the needs that have come out of this. They were there before, but there's so much more we can do together. And I think that, opportunities like this I think that that's really what we're all here for. We all have our own mission. We all have our own strengths. And so how do we help elevate and lift those up and work together to make sure that, our community is well cared for. And so, for us, we continue to remember what is our mission, and we talk about strengthening the community for all. And so what does that mean? And we're very focused on the partnerships and collaboration piece right now.
Thank you. It looks like there's a question in the chat about, Heather, what platforms are you using for your virtual workshops?
I was just typing a response. We're currently with the workshops. When we started, it was total experimental, and we did kind of a mock one first, and we used Google Meet because we had that for free. But the instructor really liked it. So we actually are still using Google Meet for the workshops. He actually signs in twice in order to, if you go into our bookbindery now, there's a big monitor, and then he has an iPad, with the cameras, because you have to be able to see how to do the work. But we're using Google Meet, but we're also, we've moved over to Zoom for any of our other virtual programs. We've got a couple lectures coming up, and we use that as well. So, and then we sign everything's advanced registration, of course, and we use Universe as our ticketing platform.
Very good. I think communication and some of those platforms, Leah, obviously, as your services have changed, you have a very different way of communicating with folks as well. So how are you letting people know as changes are occurring, and when things are happening, and when food's available, and other resources?
Thank you. We've used a lot of the same resources our friends here are talking about, the e-newsletter, social media, our website. We try to keep that updated. But a lot of our participants aren't online and savvy with IT and technological things. So that doesn't reach the majority of people who come to us. We've had over 18,000 visits to this food cupboard in this year. It's a 300% increase. So what we've started doing is information that people really need to know. At the time, it was where to get tested. We would make flyers in English and in Spanish and put them in the food boxes that we distributed. We still do that with really important information to help our participants. And then a few months ago, we implemented a texting service that has really been helpful. So we have been able to help people know any additional hours that we're open for food distribution, or if there's a weather event and that the food cupboard has to be closed. Excuse me, we then text folks. And so they've opted in to get the text information. The one we've opted for has a cloud-based service, so we can reach the message anywhere, and people do have the ability to respond back and ask more questions if they need more clarity. So that's been very helpful. The board, like every board, has moved to Zoom. And the staff meetings, we've moved to Zoom to try to help mitigate all the interaction with people.
I know you've had some fun with your logo along the way too, trying to get your word out and trying to keep your sense of humor. Do you have that in front of you today? She shared it with us during the planning meeting.
I don't know if I have that handy, but our logo typically is the house, the apple, and the heart. We do housing, food, and we have great compassion for people. And we changed that to a mask, a fire, and my house is on its side in a flood, because part of our story is not only do we have a fire and then the plague, in August, we experienced a flood from all those hurricane rains that Heather was talking about. All that weather flooded the building next to the food cupboard twice. So by September, I had mold. And now I no longer have the first floor of my resource center, which is where we had laundry, showers and offices, a conference room. Our showers and laundry were used for the homeless. And so that is no longer available because of our situation. And in December, our roof started leaking in the same building. So I'm pretty much sitting in a kayak when I'm there in Kennett. I'm joking, sort of. And we are in the pursuit of a new permanent home for CACs.
And that actually builds into the question that Jamie just asked about, is this changing your financial planning, near term and long term?
I can give you the quick answer for us.
In your case, looking for a new home, absolutely.
Yeah,
whether it was a pandemic or not.
Right, but in March, we didn't have enough laptops. And I said, everybody has to work from home, so then I had to buy laptops. We didn't have that in the budget. Our expenses dramatically increased. The need that increased, I had to hire another bilingual social worker to help with the intakes. I had to hire a couple of temporary people to help us in the food collection and distribution part because of that 300% increase in need. I created more expenses with all of this, increased staff, new processes, and less space to work with. So I remember my treasurer came to the office to sign some checks one day, and it was late April. And I looked at him and I said, Tom, I'm really nervous about the budget. Like, where do we stand? And he looked at me and he goes, Leah, that's not even relevant anymore. He's just keep doing what you need to do.
Chris, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I had a question on the technology for all the panelists. We had at CVC, for those that don't know me, I'm the CEO at the Crime Victim Center of Chester County, and we had similar challenges with the technology and getting new laptops out to 34 team members. And I've found that those challenging have been ongoing, and I have somehow managed to become the IT consultant for CVC. And all of our team is reaching out to me constantly with issues. And I'm not sure that our team are even using the laptops as we intended, because some prefer Macs and other things like that. So I'm just wondering how you all have managed these new technology challenges that we're facing as a result of our staff all having this equipment and working remotely.
Jeff, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, for us, Chris, we had a similar thing. We, as some of you may know, we were in the Exton Mall, like Lori is, and we decided not to go back to save money and just the impracticality of it. So we had to set up shop remotely, and we did the same thing. We had to set up everybody with technology in their homes. Fortunately, some of you may know Jake Siegel. He's our director of support service and really tech savvy. So I can lean on him to solve a lot of our tech issues. That's very helpful if you have somebody on your staff who is very conversant and knowledgeable about technology, I've found. So Jake was able to set up everybody remotely. We had just actually purchased some new technology, so we were up to date there, and we just made it work. We certainly there were some challenges, but once we got everybody set up and worked through those, we found that it works well. I haven't heard really too many issues on that front, because however we set that up, we set it up pretty well at the home workstations, and we've literally not had an office since March of last year. We've been completely 100% virtual, and our service center, if you will, and our store are now down at our camp in Peach Bottom, Pennsylvania. If you know where that is, it's basically on the Mason-Dixon line where our Horseshoe Scout reservation is. So at Camp Ware, we've been operating out of there with Square. That's how we do all of our transactions at our store. So we do all that on Square, and then everybody's set up with either a desktop or a laptop in their homes at the moment.
And Denise, did you already have a technology crew in place who made this seamless, or did you still have the similar struggles?
Now, we were in a fortunate situation, the fact that, with so many different locations and such, we have an IT team that were able to help us and actually do some shared services for others as well. And as with the Y, even statewide, we coordinate a lot. And right now, that's the one area that there's a lot of talk and coordination of moving more towards shared services and looking at how some of those types of programs can be done, out of one office and more efficiently and such too. So we were fortunate in that regard. We were also in the middle of a major renovation for a new association office, support service offices, and boardroom and everything. And so since then we've finished that because we couldn't stop it. We would have stopped if we could have, but we went on and finished it. So we have put some things out. We have office space, if anybody's looking for office space. And now we have a very nice boardroom that we went ahead and just recently decided to go ahead and finish, so that now as our board can start to come back, it's large enough that we can stay pretty much, social distance, but we've put in the technology to be able to have some people virtual and see them on the screen as well to participate in a meeting and such. So if anybody's looking at a place to hold a board meeting and need help along those lines, it's right in downtown. It's at our Oscar Lasco YMCA. We'd be certainly happy to offer up that boardroom that is nicely designed to hold a virtual hybrid meeting, I would call it.
Was that already in the works, or did you actually rethink that because of the pandemic?
It was already in the works, but we did a little rethinking to the technology. We used to, our board meetings, we didn't allow people to call in. We looked at our, right away, we looked at our bylaws and thought whether or not we needed to make a change. And we did have that ability, but it wasn't something that we really promoted. So now it'll be an option. So.
And did you have to look at your bylaws to do that? Or are you guys having to change that piece of your work as well?
As I said, we went back and looked at our bylaws and saw that we actually had it in there that we could vote, electronically and attend meetings that way. But that is a suggestion that folks may want to look at, is where your bylaws all are for that, to allow for that.
And Jeff, same thing, knowing that we're probably not going, there is no normal, and we're not going back to 2019. Since you're also in the middle of a building project, are you putting sort of these pandemic considerations into it? Did you find they were already there, or is this causing you to have to shift your thinking?
Well, I think, just a larger point, I think this technology has changed how we're all going to work, right? So I think what we've discovered is you don't necessarily need to go to a physical office every day. In fact, a funny story is we haven't spent one dime on furniture for our building because everybody's abandoning commercial office space. So we're finding a lot of generosity from, companies that are moving or abandoning their or downsizing their space and have a lot of things they don't need anymore. And fortunately, it's nice stuff, and they've given it to us. So that's been a huge cost savings to our project. But I just think that we are set up, but we're going to look forward to having a physical space to go back to. And but we're also, I think, going to be mindful that people can be just as efficient, working from remotely, either in their homes or with a laptop. And I think it'll be a hybrid. It won't be everybody goes into the office every day and leaves at the end of the day. And I think all of us work, we all have our preferences. Some people hate working at home and can't wait to get back out of their home into an office, and others prefer maybe working from home and maybe are more efficient that way. I find benefits to both personally, but we're thinking through that for sure. It like the pandemic's changed a lot of things, and I think that's one big thing. It's going to be the new normal, where people are meeting remotely and utilizing technology, where people don't need to get in cars and drive distances and sit face to face in meetings. You can be just as efficient and effective virtually sometimes.
Thank you, Jeff. And Heather, where do we go from here? I know there's a question about talking to your stakeholders, talking to the foundations. Where are you headed?
Well, it's interesting. We received a grant in December from the Chester County Resilience and Innovation Fund to do a new strategic plan and financial health assessment. And we been working through that this winter, and we still don't know where we're going because we just held our board and staff retreat 2 weeks ago via Zoom. And we've been collecting community input, which is laying the groundwork for us in that regard. And I was going to mention, Jeff was saying about, Zoom meetings and, some things not going back to the way we did things before. This, Connie, our facilitator, she's been scheduling all our individual committee meetings via Zoom for wrangling each the various goals and objectives of the different areas of the strategic plan. And I think it's going to go so much faster and seamlessly. And we've had, Connie might argue against this because she's been trying to schedule all this, but trying to get everybody together for these meetings has been a lot simpler, and I think we'll be able to get it done in a time frame that's a lot more practical than we would have done if we had them all in person. And I think going forward, I wonder, I know our board would love to have in-person meetings again eventually, but in a pinch during a snowstorm or something like that, you don't have to completely throw the organizational calendar out the window because of a snowstorm, or fill in the blank of what might be happening, because you can switch to Zoom and get things done. So I think from a organizational planning standpoint, we've learned so many new ways to get things done in the past year. A lot more flexible, I think.
Very good. Jeff, same thing, 2-minute drill. Where are you headed?
Well, we're headed to our new office building. We're happy about that. But
With your nice furniture.
right. And we'll want to do something over there, a chamber networking happy hour or something. We'll have everybody over to see it. It's going to be a great community asset. We really want to utilize it not only for scouting, but for the community. It's centrally located, and we're really happy to share it with everyone. It's going to be a phenomenal space for us. As far as where we're headed, we have to rebuild capacity. We're a membership organization as well, like the Y, and we've got to get those young Cub Scouts out and their families and rebuild. So that's really what our focus is going to be. We've started our new strategic plan, and we're going to be really focused on hoping to attract families to scouting here in the years to come, because we took a big hit, frankly, with this pandemic, as I explained before, and we just need to rebuild to get back to where we were and hopefully forward from there.
Very good. And to Denise.
Well, we're in the middle of a strategic planning process this year, and where we were at, we just really felt that we developed a 1-year kind of, recovery plan. And then we start a very intensive strategic planning process here. We're actually starting next month, and that will set us up for January. But, we know, as Jeff just said, we've got to get our members back, and we've got to do it creatively. So we are looking at some new offerings. We started esports and looking at outdoor offerings. We found out our members, they're telling us they want to continue to work out outside. We have people, on exercise bikes in 20 degrees, crazy. So we want to make sure that we have some spaces for that, and looking at some other creative things to do along those lines. And, just continue to look, as I said, at if there's new emerging community needs, and then, continue to focus on our mission and strengthening the community.
Thank you, Denise. And Leah, your 2 minutes.
Thank you. As I listen to my colleagues talk about this, we are in a little bit of a different situation because of our multiple issues with not having a proper space to do what we do with this increased need. But in the spirit of the way we started this morning, when Pam said building progress at the speed of trust, I can assure you that CACS is still building the plane, and we're still flying it. We will continue to give until we have nothing left to give. And thanks to the generosity of Southern Chester County, CACS is able to show up for people that need us. So we're going to keep building this plane.
And I'm just thrilled that you all joined us this morning, that you're all still here, because honestly, that is a big deal. When this first started, the estimate was 40% of the nonprofits, and Steph can actually probably has better statistics than I do, we're not going to survive this. So the fact that some of the organizations in Chester County are not only surviving, some of them are starting to thrive again is amazing. So, but I think it's also very important that you're staying at the table. It was, you know, a big deal that the commissioners decided to take the CARES money. They were able to administer that through the Chester County Community Foundation, and so many organizations were able to benefit from that. As we move into the recovery phases, it's imperative that the nonprofit sector remains at the table, remains relevant, and remains important. And honestly, many of the lessons learned here are really transferable to the small businesses as well. Just like the nonprofits are working through business continuity planning, thinking about issues of space, issues of technology, issues of people and communication, it really is transferable to the business community and as a whole as well. So thank you. With that, I'll turn it back to Laurie.
Thank you, everybody. This was really a great program. So much information. And I just wanted to, again, thank our panelists today. I will be following up with an email to everybody and a copy of the presentation for those who might have missed it or want to go back to more. I'm so thrilled you're all here too. And seeing that light at the end of the tunnel and the brightness and the progress of trust as we move forward. I do really want to also thank our sponsor, Pam Leland, who does have a lot to offer nonprofits and is very valuable to our chamber. And I can't wait to get back into more personal board meetings as well. I know that the difference between ease of doing it virtual, where people can participate in the car or on their way to the next meeting, versus being in touch in person. So I value everything that you say on that line. And I really want to thank our nonprofit council, led by Bill Friedman from Blue Dog Printing and Design, for all you do to bring these very valuable programs to our nonprofits and the for-profit businesses that support them to the Exton Chamber. And would like to save the date for Friday, July 16th for our next in this series called Succession Planning. I'm sure it's going to have a different name before July. We have some creative folks on the panel, and all of you on this panel, please feel free to forward me any information that you would like me to share with the participants' membership about what your needs are moving forward. I know there's a lot of campaigns going out there right now, and anything that the Exton Chamber can do to support that. I really value what you've been all doing for the community, from Janet all the way down to Leah, and we're here to support that. So without further ado, I don't know if anybody else has anything to mention or add to the group. Of course, put it in the chat. We will keep it open if anybody wants to connect afterwards. I will be here till 10. But other than that, the event is over right now. So thank you all for being here.